Today we're going to talk about visual rhetoric. I don't expect you to be a graphic designer, and I know that I'm not one either, but learning a little bit about document design will help you to make better written documents. We're going to do an infographic in this class, which is very visual, but even documents like email and resumes can benefit from good visual rhetoric and document design. What's amazing about visual rhetoric is you're surrounded by it all the time and may not know it, but you do know a lot of things instinctively about visual rhetoric. For example, when you look at the slide, you know that it's hard to read such small text. Additionally, this slide has a lot of what's called white space. In this example, the white space is literally white, but it just means the space that doesn't have words or pictures in it. So all of this white space, all around here. The effect is that it's going to make these words very lonely, adrift in a sea of white space. So, okay, if you don't like the white space, let's fix it. This example has no white space. The words go all the way to the edge on everything, and it's very hard to read these words. Nothing, as the text suggests, is emphasized, so it's very overwhelming, and our minds kind of tune it out. The words become like wallpaper instead of giving meaning. If too much white space was too lonely and too little is too overwhelming, let's try another strategy. Bulleted lists are a great way to present information, but the lists need to be, as it says here, parallel. Parallel means that similar things are presented in a similar way. Here, some bullets are complete sentences and some are sentence fragments. Some are questions, some have periods, and some have nothing at all. Instead of making everything a bullet point, make sure to use bullet points to give emphasis rather than just as a default. Speaking of emphasis, some people think that if a little emphasis is good, a lot of emphasis is better. They might use exclamation points, caps, bold, etc. to excess. As with a lack of white space, this creates an overwhelming effect. Exclamation points especially can be annoying if overused. Treat them like maraschino cherries on an ice cream sundae. It's nice to have one or two, but it would be disgusting if you had a whole dish filled with nothing but them. So far we've been black and white, but don't forget the power of color. These colors have two strikes going against them. First, you can tell instinctively that they're too close to each other. They're too similar. This yellow and this blue-green are too close to each other to have any contrast. It's also hard to read the words. Additionally, they're very bright together. Such shades may be used in moderation for emphasis, but they don't lend themselves to reading whole sentences. And again, here we have that default bullet point. There's nothing else here bulleted. Okay. Special effects like color can be good in moderation, but when you rely too much on visual effects, you can make your writing difficult to understand, to read, and you may undercut what it is that you're saying. So for example, having a dozen different fonts on one resume won't make you look special, it will make you look unprofessional. So one good mnemonic when you think about visual rhetoric comes from Robin Williams, the graphic designer, not the comedian. This Robin Williams, she gives us 4 principles of design to remember, and I like to think of these principles as crap. Remember crap to keep your documents from looking like crap. So contrast is the first principle. Contrast can come in many different forms. Color, shape, size, all of these can be contrast, but it's used to highlight difference. The sentence or word that is in a different form should be in a different content as well. So for example, you might use the color of the font to emphasize a sentence. So these two are similar, this one is different. If contrast is about difference, repetition is about similarity. Things that are similar look similar. This is sometimes called parallelism, as we discussed on the slide about bullet points. Good bullet points like these are all similar kinds of sentences with similar related content. So you wouldn't do 2 bullet points that are things to do, and then the last bullet point is an address and contact information. So keep them all similar. Bullet points are also a really good example of this next point, alignment. Bullet points are really good examples of using alignment. You can see how the example in this slide gives the reader information about the content of the sentences and their relationship. So you can see these are headers, these are subpoints. You do want to be cautious about having too many different types of alignments. You may want something center aligned for a title and then left justified for the rest. 3 levels, 3 different kinds of alignment is usually plenty, especially on one page. Alignment gives readers lots of clues about the relationships between the information. So you can understand the relationship here, right? These two are main points, these two are subpoints of this one, right? The other principle that shows relationship is in this next slide, proximity. So images, sentences, and graphics that are close together are naturally related to each other. So grouping, for example, your skills in one section of your resume will help your audience see them as one category. Well, if you spread them around the resume, it would make them hard for your reader to process them all as skills. So something close together is seen related, and something far apart is seen not related. So I would imagine this belonging together and this not. You can see this also back here. These subpoints, are next to this point, they're not next to this one. And so you see that these two subpoints relate to this sentence here. So now that you have these tools, you can begin to see what was wrong with the slides from the beginning of the slideshow. We're going to review just 2 of them. First, this slide fails in the repetition. So you have these bullet points. They're not presenting the same kind of language or information. But in its defense, it does have good alignment. So we have a centered title. And then this is left justified, right? It's all along the left side of the page. So there's nothing like whoop in the middle. So all aligned well bullets. This one suffers from a lack of contrast and alignment. We talked a little bit about contrast and emphasis. So the sentences are all flowing into each other, all one big blob. So now you can go forth and design, especially for your infographic. So just to summarize, document design impacts how written words are interpreted by your audience, and you may have an instinctive understanding of design without having the vocabulary. Learning things like white space, alignment, justification, these are good vocabulary words. And especially these CRAP principles can help guide you in good document design, both in this class and going forward.